West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
Today, America celebrates its Independence Day, but the state of the country is not looking anything like the democratic ideals upon which it was founded. The Supreme Court voted this week to uphold 2 Arizona laws that would make it harder for people of color to access the ballot box and jeopardizes the Voting Rights Act. Meanwhile, Republicans continue to try to rewrite history Trump style by denying it ever happened. Only 2 House Republicans voted to create a January 6th select committee to investigate the violent attack on the Capitol. But you can't deny the truth, especially when it's on video. The New York Times released this stunning breakdown of the insurrection.
Behind these rioters and just feet away is an escape route where lawmakers and Senate staff are now fleeing. Just one officer stands guard. Keeping his composure, Goodman draws the mob away from that escape route to where reinforcements are waiting. He glances toward the Senate and realizes a door is unguarded. Goodman shoves the protester again, lures the mob away, and brings them into that line of fellow officers.
Always chilling to see that. Joining me now, Ruth Marcus, Deputy Editorial Page Editor and columnist for The Washington Post, John Bresnahan, co-founder of Punchbowl News, and Joan Walsh, National Affairs Correspondent for The Nation. All happy 4th of July. Thank you all for being here. Ruth, let me start with you and the Supreme Court decision in the Arizona cases. Let me get you to react to something from Justice Alito in the opinion, where he writes, because voting necessarily requires some effort and compliance with some rules, the concept of a voting system that is equally open and that furnishes an equal opportunity to cast a ballot must tolerate the usual burdens of voting. Mere inconvenience cannot be enough to demonstrate a violation. Ruth, not only are you a journalist, you are a lawyer. So your reaction to that?
Well, mere inconvenience. I would actually encourage Justice Alito to go visit some of the Native American voters or would-be voters in Arizona who don't live near mailboxes, who many of whom don't have cars, many of whom live very far from polling places, and see whether their ability to not be able to have other people collect their ballots and bring them in for counting is a quote-unquote mere inconvenience. And that's just a sliver of what Justice Alito and his 5 conservative colleagues did to the remaining part, or what had been the remaining part of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
And the other thing, Ruth, I'll add to the litany of things you just pointed out. Also, a lot of people don't have formal street addresses. That was something that came up, I believe, in North Dakota. Joan, your reaction to the Supreme Court decision?
Well, Ruth has exactly right. And then there are more sections of the Alito decision that you could put on the screen to outrage us all on this beautiful holiday morning, Jonathan. And one of them that jumped out at me was where he essentially enshrines Donald Trump's big lie about voter fraud and says voter fraud is a very serious concern, and it's correct. States must worry about this. This is a legitimate concern. Voter fraud is almost non-existent. And he writes in a language that was really reminiscent of the way a lot of Trump supporters, lawyers, legislators, et cetera, in Congress and in state legislatures around the country talked about, well, we don't know that there's voter fraud, but people are worried about voter fraud, so we have to be very careful to make sure there's no voter fraud, even though we don't know about very much of it at all. And so that really chilled me to see that taken, that kind of argument, which has been used to discredit Joe Biden's election for, going on 8 months now, to see that come from a Supreme Court justice was chilling to me.
And, Brez, one of the things about this court decision and our system of government is if the Supreme Court hands down a nutty ruling, Congress could easily just pass a law to correct what the Congress believes that the Supreme Court did wrong. And yet, when it came to just approving the ability to have a debate about the For the People Act, it went down in the ball of flames. Is Congress this go round going to be the escape hatch for doing something on voting rights?
I don't see Congress doing anything right now, and not unless they get rid of the filibuster. And your point is so well taken. Listen, the two biggest decisions from the Supreme Court since 2010, Citizens United and the voting rights decisions in Shelby County versus Holder. And now, right. I mean, Congress could take up these issues, but since 2010, when Citizens United struck down a lot of restrictions on campaign finance, which is part of this whole argument, I think that we have to look at it as well. That Congress has not done anything. They haven't been able to do anything on voting, on campaign finance. So I think these issues are, they become more and more critical. We have less voting access and we have more money in the system. It's the worst of all possible worlds, thanks to Supreme Court decisions over the last 11 years.
Brez, let me get your reaction to what House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy had to say about Liz Cheney, Congresswoman Cheney, being a part of the Select Committee.
I'm not making any threats about committee assignments, but as you know how Congress works, you get elected by your district and you get your committees from your conference. I don't know in history where someone would go get their committee assignments from the speaker and expect them to have them from the conference as well.
House Minority Leader, I was about to say Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, is sort of, to me, he's the poster boy for why our democracy is at risk. Do you think he's going to follow through and punish Liz Cheney for doing her constitutional duty? We had reported this originally when he made this warning. He didn't call it a threat. He called it a warning. And I talked to Cheney after she joined the Select Committee, myself and some other reporters, and her whole position was, look, I'm doing my duty. Cheney feels very strongly that Congress needs to look at January 6th, needs to look at the role that former President Trump had, needs to look at the role everybody had. I think Cheney, McCarthy's position or the position of the GOP leadership is they think now that maybe Cheney's not running again for re-election. I don't know. Cheney's people say she is. So, I think there'll be pressure inside the conference to take some action against Cheney. I do. They already kicked her out of leadership. I mean, I could see them trying to strip her of committee assignments. I could see that happening. There'll definitely be some kind of retaliation, I think. In the time that we have left, Joan and Ruth, I'm going to come to you with this question. Sorry, Brez, I gave you an extra question, so you get to sit this one out. And that is, we're at 4th of July. This is the 4th of July. This segment is about our democracy being at risk because of the Supreme Court decision in Arizona, the Select Committee on the January 6th insurrection. Joan, I'll start with you. What does America mean to you in this moment that we're in?
America is in grave danger, the America that we know. I am so grateful on this July 4th that we, the people, were able to peacefully, at least we were peaceful, our side, evict Donald Trump from the White House and elect a genuine statesman, Joe Biden. But whenever I watch clips from the video that you've shown, I don't understand how Republicans have become the party of sedition and the party that stands up against democracy and pro-voter suppression. We're in grave danger at this point, and to have this great holiday fall basically 6 months after that terrifying insurrection, I think it's trying to tell us something. I think we're supposed to pay attention, and too many Republicans are not.
Ruth?
And I guess on this July 4th, I would say I'm simultaneously so worried and so thankful. I'm so worried about the state of our democracy, the notion that the Republicans, including Congressman McCarthy, who said it would be prudent to have an investigation of the insurrection, will turn their back on that. Democracy is so much more fragile than we thought it was. Our society, in the wake of George Floyd and the focus that has put on inequality across the board and mistreatment across the board, is so much more divided than I thought it was. And yet I want to just end on a good note, which is so thankful to America and American ingenuity for having come up with the vaccines that allow us to celebrate this July 4th in a so much more normal way than a year ago. So let's end on a good note.
It is Monday, the 5th of July of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunnar the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays, because we had an Independence Day weekend like none other, at least from the last 4 years. Yes, we're gonna keep mentioning that because it's still there's gonna be a first. It's gonna be a first, and then after we've gotten all the firsts, well, then maybe we'll get used to it again. I don't know, but it seemed different. I shall admit that I expected a lot more fireworks blasted off nearby, but they went somewhere else. They actually congregated out in open fields. Oh, how nice! And did their illegal fireworks there. There was a little bit in the middle of the street up the hill from my house. Yeah, and we live right next to, Chaparral, the Wild. So we don't want that going up in flames because it'll come right over here. But fortunately, it was to a minimum. There was none of the actual mortar-type pyrotechnics that I have seen in this neighborhood. I think of all the times I lived in the Bay Area, and you could see illegal mortar-fired pyrotechnic rounds out like in the flatlands and, over Oakland and San Leandro and all those areas. Sure, kind of low flying. But never really close. But around here they do, yeah. So, I don't know. You would think that these meth heads were spending all their money on meth, but I guess they got enough to buy almost military-grade fireworks. And when I say military-grade fireworks, I mean the kind that's pretty defective. Yeah. The idea of bombs bursting in air means that the bombs didn't make it to their target, and they let the British know where we were so that the British could kill us mercilessly. And we celebrate that every 4th of July. I always thought Americans had it ass backwards, even as a kid. Jeez. Well, people who don't know, always want to tell you that they know better. Speaking of which, what is this Thomas Massie up to? He is presenting a bill that would give the military the ability to deny an order. And what is that order? Well, it's going to be mandatory COVID vaccinations. And that's too far. So Massey and so far 24 other co-sponsors are presenting a bill that would deny mandatory vaccinations for COVID-19. Now, why is that specifically for COVID-19? Is there a genocide going on and these guys are just going to keep doing it? What is up with this? How is it that a Nazi insurgent and 24 other Nazi insurgents can incite the military to mutiny? Because what he is proposing is that the military not follow an order. Washington at Valley Forge, it was pretty cold at Valley Forge, and some people were catching some bad diseases. So he had troops inoculated against smallpox. Every military, before they're deployed anywhere in the world, goes through a series of inoculations specific to that region. Why is it that these Nazi insurgents, and I'm going to keep putting the emphasis on Nazi, why is it that they want people dead? Well, the question answers itself, doesn't it? Because they're Nazis. And that's why I get pretty upset when people like Zuckerberg on his little wakeboard flitting around with the American flag. Oh, yeah, that's great. Allows these Nazis to get away with what they're getting away with. I'm not upset about my small voice getting silenced. But when you think about all the little voices that get silenced against all the loudmouth bullies, the real ones, by the way, and Zuckerberg is a part of that. And then you have to realize, Nazi Germany would not have been Nazi Germany without corporate help. That's why they became Nazis. No business has ever run like a democracy. How many times have we heard that before? And now they're proving it. It's run like a bunch of Nazis. You had the soup Nazi. You got every kind of Nazi you can think of. And now they get to be Nazis. So much so that a bunch of Nazis from Texas thought they could go to Philly and walk around. And you look, Philly booed Santa. What do you think they're going to do to a bunch of Texas Nazis? Exactly. They were not welcome. And good on Philly. Thank you. It's about time someone stood up to these Nazis. Because people have. And they usually get killed by, Proud Boy, cop, protected little Trumpenjungen, Kyle Rittenhouse. Now there's all these little puff pieces. So sad. Little Kyle was kept in jail because Lynn Wood is a corrupt lawyer. Well, geez, so what? You get what you get. And, you could have avoided all this by not letting your kid carry around all these weapons. Everybody forgets the people that he killed, and why did he kill them? Why did they try to take him, why did they try to take his weapon away from him? Because he was a threat to the community. He was a terrorist. He had already shot some street person, homeless type person. And a skateboarder, another guy got killed. Another one got his hand all blown off. Well, they wanted stormtroopers, and that's what we got. And then I guess we have to consider the fact that everybody believes that we're like at a 20-year high in crime. No, we're not. Not even close. It's an out-and-out lie. And why the media is perpetuating this lie, well, we know. We already know. Goebbels and Himmler much? Huh? We've seen this movie so many times before. Come on. Now suddenly the Nazis are the good guys? Give me a break. It's not. They always try to make you think that. And then, next thing you know, what does a Nazi do? They do what they do because that's why they're Nazis. So, what a weekend, huh? It was actually quite pleasant, considering the unpleasant 4th of Julys we've had before. Especially these Trump boat parades. You know, there's actually some legal actions being brought down by boating and sailing associations upon these idiots. How is it, wait, everybody says, oh, they're just like poor, they're afraid their jobs are... No, they're not. They're burgermeisters. They can afford pleasure craft, if not out-and-out yachts. Jesus. Oh, well, it does take a lot of money to keep a, boat going, and sometimes you're living by the skin of your teeth to keep your boat going. But I don't think it's with these guys, because they still got monster trucks that they can parade around in an ISIS caravan. Oh, yeah. I'll just end on this note. Those sovereign Moors that got pulled over in Massachusetts, I believe. Where was that? But anyway, they arrested 11 of them because they were heavily armed, and they admitted that they don't follow the laws of America. And so, of course, they're going to get arrested. But I don't know. You have these ISIS maggot caravans who say the exact same thing. And I don't know, the cops share intel with them. Yeah, here's where some leftists are. Oh, you know where some leftists are? Let's go get them. That's why I keep calling them Nazis. Isn't that what the Nazis did? Yeah. Which also brings, well, I'll end on this note, which also brings to mind the whole term MAGA. Is it coincidental that it's also 2 syllables, MAGA, Nazi? When you have a propaganda that lives in the gutter, just follow me now. I'm not making any type of, cultural discriminatory statement, really. But when you have a propaganda that lives in the gutter, you would expect a little gutturals, wouldn't you? Yes, you would. Nazi? Not really a guttural, but close. But MAGA. I think they studied long and hard on that one, or I don't know. Maybe Stephen Miller figured it out when he was trying to get the Mexican janitor at Santa Monica High School fired simply because he was Mexican. Maybe he came up with it then. It tickles the same part of the lizard pituitary stimuli that Nazi does, and it appeals to a certain subset of America, about a third, and they got all the guns. They got them. Okay, well, we still have the votes, if only we can get the votes counted without all this cyber ninja BS. Jesus, pretty soon they're going to have a whole repository of everybody's in America's, facial recognition information, biometric information, everything, right down to your heart rate in real time at some compound in Montana. Cyber ninjas will do it for you. Okay, well, enough of that. We do have an actual curated show for you today. We do. We don't take any time off unless, I do apologize for being down last week from, I guess we'll just say got sun poison, heat exhaustion. Yeah, The heat got to me, and I'm not a young man anymore, and I need to learn to take care of myself. I thought I was. But I guess that taking care of yourself in this kind of weather means not being out in the baking sun too long. Doing things. Maybe if I was just sitting quietly having a cool drink, slow cool drink, maybe that would have worked. But we'll find out some other day. For now, I do appreciate that you're here with us today on this fine River City Hatch Mondays. And at the top, that was Capehart yesterday, breaking it down about how it's good to know after we just celebrated Independence Day. And now I'm saying that the state of our democracy depends on the filibuster. Yep, depends. So Ruth Marcus actually wanted to end on a high note, and that's good. Yeah, thank goodness for the vaccine. If we could only convince about 71 million, what do we call them? Good Republicans. Like the good Germans of old. If we could only convince them to get the vaccine instead of Nazi insurgents like Massey inciting the troops to mutiny. On the rest of the menu, after pressure from environmentalists, a company canceled plans to build an oil pipeline over an aquifer in southwest Tennessee that provides drinking water to 1 million people. We're going to have some good news here. Okay. Des Moines, Iowa faces extreme measures to find clean water after decades of farm fertilizer runoff. That's not such good news, but they're working hard. And discarded shells from American restaurants are helping to establish new oyster colonies in the nation's waterways. After the break, we move to the chef's table. Oh, let me back up and just mention bivalve cuspids, I believe is what they are technically or scientifically known as, help filter the water. Okay, if we could just stop with the fertilizer that pretty much overwhelms them and all the other industrial chemicals, we would have clean waterways and tasty little morsels. And okay, oops, I already said that. After the break, we move to the chef's table where details are emerging about how a Russia-linked gang conducted the single biggest global ransomware attack on record this holiday weekend. And a Brazilian Supreme Court justice authorized a criminal investigation into Bolsonaro's potential corruption involving the nation's shady vaccine deal. Yeah, even with Sputnik. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln, and we thank Kelly for doing so. To the left of the chat room link that is near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Though the bulk of how we keep this powerhouse of resistance powerhoused is coming out of our own pockets and wallets and purses, is that we would still be unable to do any of this without your help. And we have actually needed your help for all these last 10 years, and even more so now. It's only gotten worse. But we thank you for your generosity. Now, there are those of you who have sent us what they would spend on an espresso-type coffee drink, sometimes 2, and sent those funds our way once a month. And if you could do so as well, that would be so helpful. And then we stretch those dollars and we pay our bills, and then we somehow fly under the radar and continue this powerhouse of resistance as the founders originally intended. Thank you for your generosity, and also thank you for considering doing so when you're able. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Tom made it simple, and Tom takes care of it. And you can find us at Netroots Radio. Simple. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and you might as well, because I post the show notes and links diary, not a story, diary, on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that linked up on social media and like Twitter. And so that's where the show notes and links are. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Also, you can pick up podcasts of my music show. It's a sonic poem every week, Sunday nights, but I put out a podcast. You can find that. West Coast, the Justice Department. I'm West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy during the daytime, and on Sundays, and then the podcast arises out of the Sunday evening show, is the Justice Department music. Sans Frontier. Yeah, I can get it out. What's my music show? So do pick up podcasts for that, and that comes out weekly. And the show's on at 8 p.m. on Sunday nights if you want to catch it in its, somewhat live state. Let's tuck in to this first offering here in the salon part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy that we call the Bistro Cafe. And it comes from the Associated Press by Adrienne Sands. Environmentalists and activists claimed victory on Saturday after a company canceled plans to build an oil pipeline through southwest Tennessee and north Mississippi and over an aquifer that provides drinking water to 1 million people. The Byhalia Connection said it will no longer pursue plans to build a 49-mile underground artery that would have linked 2 major U.S. oil pipelines while running through wetlands and under poor, predominantly black neighborhoods in South Memphis. Oh, they had a plan. A joint venture between Valero and Plains All-American Pipeline, Byhalia Connection, had said the pipeline would bring jobs and tax revenue to the region. That's what they always say. And then after they get it built, it takes like about 2 guys to run the whole thing. And then they're usually incompetent, asleep, watching TV anyway. And it had given to Memphis area charities because they're trying to greenwash it and tried to build goodwill in the community. But in a Securities and Exchange Commission filing on Friday, Byhalia Connection said it was canceling the project, quote, due to lower U.S. oil production resulting from COVID-19 pandemic, end quote. We value the relationships we've built through the development of this project and appreciate those that supported the project. Byhalia's Connection statement said, oh, really? In other words, you're just slinking out of town because you got caught. Byhalia Connection has said the pipeline route was not driven by factors such as race or class. The company denied accusations of environmental racism that emerged after Byhalia Connection's land agent said during a community meeting that the developers took, quote, basically a point of least resistance in choosing the pipeline's path. Project officials had reached deals with most landowners on the pipeline's planned route to use their land for construction. A few holdouts were taken to court. The pipeline's lawyers sought eminent domain, long invoked by governments to claim private property for public use projects, and now private companies use to take your land. Scott McFetridge of the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. In the dim light just after dawn, Bill Bluebaugh parks his Des Moines Waterworks pickup truck, grabs a dipper and a couple plastic bottles, and walks down a boat ramp to the Raccoon River, where he scoops up samples from a waterway that cuts through some of the nation's most intensely farmed land. Each day, the utility analyzes what's in those samples and others from the nearby Des Moines River as it works to deliver drinking water to more than 500,000 people in Iowa's capital city and its suburbs. Some mornings walking down, it smells like ammonia, he said. It's concerning. I'm down here every morning and care about the water. Waterworks for years has tried to force or cajole farmers upstream to reduce the runoff of fertilizer that leaves the rivers with sky-high nitrate levels, but lawsuits and legislative lobbying have failed. Now it's considering a drastic measure that, as a rule, large cities just don't do: drilling wells to find water. Now, let me just cut in here and make mention of the fact that our aquifers are being siphoned off already. If we're down to getting the aquifers emptied out, we're in big trouble. Drilling water wells to get water to 500,000, 1 million, 2 million people is not a sustainable project. You know what is sustainable? Making sure our climate doesn't burn us to a crisp. And one way to do that would be good neighbors and maybe lessen the amount of fertilizer that's actually used that harms the environment. Brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Call it the seafood circle of life. Shells discarded by diners are being collected, cleaned, and dumped into waterways around the country and the world, where they form the basis of new oyster colonies. One of the latest such projects is taking place in Atlantic City, where a casino and 2 other restaurants are saving the shells left over from their diners. The shells are then collected by the State Department of Environmental Protection, and workers and volunteers with Rutgers and Stockton Universities and the Jetty Rock Foundation load them on barges and dump them into the Maluka River. The waterway is home to one of the last self-sustaining oyster populations on the Atlantic coast. The clam, oyster, and other shells form the basis of new or expanded oyster colonies, with when free floating baby oysters known as spat attached to the shells and begin to grow on them. You have the benefit not only of ecological restoration, but it has kept 65 tons of shells out of landfills. And that was said by Scott Stuber, a fisheries biologist with the DEP. And of course, that helps the eateries save on waste disposal costs. The program began in 2019 and currently collects oysters from the Hard Rock Casino, the Knife and Fork Restaurant, and Doc's Oyster House in Atlantic City. Several other casinos have expressed interest in joining. Oysters are natural filters. A single adult oyster can strain particles and contaminants from 50 gallons of water a day. In addition to improving water quality, oyster colonies are also being planted along coastlines as a shore stabilization and storm mitigation strategy. The bumpy underwater colonies can act as speed bumps for destructive waves headed for the shoreline, dissipating some of their energy. The goal is not so much to create new places to harvest and sell oysters for consumption, more as a way to improve the environment. Well, I say if you have a choice of two things, take both. Well, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, not that long, but strange. If the movie Gaia had to be summed up in a word, it might be trippy, which is sort of appropriate given the central role of mushrooms in the proceedings. Way more than just trippy, though, Gaia is a cautionary tale about humanity's destructive influence on the world, noting, apocalyptically, that nature always wins. The convention here is that of a horror movie with plenty of thrills and chills throughout. Set in South Africa, the story starts with two forest rangers, Winston and Gabby, who are on assignment in a national park. After the pair become separated, Gabby stumbles upon a pair of resident survivalists, Berend and his son Stefan. Injured by a booby trap set up by the pair to dissuade intruders, Gabby has no option but to stay with them. As she recovers, it becomes clear that there's something else in the forest that's not exactly human or human anymore. The creature, best described as a human-shroom hybrid, seems connected to a mysterious fungus that's found in the forest and which affects everyone, including Gabby. As the layers are peeled back on Baron's former life, we find that he was formerly a chemical engineer, casting a looming doubt as to the natural or other origins of the fungus. Roughly based on the controversial Gaia theory of the 1970s, there's a creepy sexual subtext involving Baron's adolescent son and Gabby, as well as a biblical parallel to the Isaac and Jacob story in the final act. Beautifully shot and sound mixed, and with a strong performance from Carol Nell as Baron, Gaia is scary, thought-provoking, and stylish in a tight 96 minutes, and is even more notable as its director Jacko Bauer's first full-length feature. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Welcome to A Cup of Health with CDC, a weekly feature of the MMWR, the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. I'm your host, Dr. Kathleen Dooling. From a very young age, we're encouraged to eat fruits and vegetables. Unfortunately, many Americans are not getting the message. Dr. Seung-Hee Lee Kwan is with CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion. She's joining us today to discuss the importance of eating enough fruits and vegetables. Welcome to the show, Seung-Hee.
Thank you for having me.
Seung-Hee, what is the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
The federal guidelines recommend that adults consume at least 1.5 cups to 2 cups of fruit and 2 to 3 cups of vegetables each day. This is for adults who get less than 30 minutes of physical activity a day. Adults who are more physically active need more calories and thus should be eating more fruits and vegetables. 1 cup is about 12 strawberries or 1 large tomato.
How many people consume the recommended amount of fruits and vegetables?
We found that very few adults are getting enough fruits and vegetables. Just 12% are eating the recommended amount of fruits, and less than 1 in 10 eat enough vegetables. And consumption is lower among men, young adults, and adults living in poverty.
Why is eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables so important?
Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help with three things. One, it can reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and deaths, such as heart disease, type 2 diabetes, some cancers, and even obesity. It can also add important nutrients that are commonly missing in Americans' diet. And it can help with weight management if adults consume fruits and vegetables instead of other calorie-dense foods.
How can we meet the recommended daily intake of fruits and vegetables?
Try to fill half of your plate with fruits or vegetables at each meal or every eating occasion. Making fruits and vegetables the focal point of your meal will help you meet your recommendations. For example, recent studies have shown that adults get most of their fruit during breakfast and snacks. So you can try adding berries to your morning oatmeal or grab a piece of fresh fruit as an afternoon snack. For vegetables, most adults eat them at dinner, so try adding more into your lunch by adding a side salad or packing a snack of baby carrots or grape tomatoes.
Are canned or frozen products just as good as fresh?
All forms of fruits and vegetables count towards meeting the recommendations. For the most health benefits, make sure that the fruits and vegetables you consume have a limited amount of salt, butter, sugar, or creamy sauces. When selecting canned fruits, choose the ones with lowest sugars. And for canned or frozen vegetables, choose those lower in sodium.
Where can listeners get more information about eating a healthy diet?
Listeners can go to cdc.gov/nutrition or choosemyplate.gov.
Thanks, Seung-hee. I've been talking today with Seung-hee Lee Kwon about the importance of eating a healthy diet. Eating a diet rich in fruits and vegetables can help reduce the risk of many leading causes of illness and death and add important nutrients to your diet. Make sure you're eating enough. Until next time, be well. This is Dr. Kathleen Dooling for A Cup of Health with CDC.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
Warning. A mutant coronavirus named Gubernatorius imbecilius is spreading across the country, threatening to become pandemic. Originating earlier this year in the Texas governor's office, infamously known as the Laboratory of Bad Government, the brain-eating virus escaped, is now drifting unchecked on the political winds, and has already infected occupants of governorships in Florida, Idaho, Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. An early indicator that your governor, too, might be coming down with Gubernatorius imbecilius is if he or she begins ranting paranoically that the mighty U.S. of A. is being invaded. Yes, invaded by masses of migrants from Mexico, Central America, and hell itself, all intent on rape, murder, drug peddling, mayhem, and ultimately the usurpation of our nation. Having such a delusional governor is embarrassing, but the disease turns downright scary when infected governors try acting on their paranoia. Greg Abbott, for example, the GOP governor of Texas, is the one who conjured up this current invasion fantasy and is causing it to go viral in Republican state houses. Abbott is a frantic Chicken Little, squawking that, quote, a tidal wave of amnesty seekers crossing our southern border are, quote, causing farmers to lose their crops, homes are being invaded, neighborhoods are dangerous, people are being threatened. His solution? Build a wall. Yes, obviously demented by Gubernatorius imbecilius, the extent of Abbott's creativity is an insane repeat of Donnie Trump's failed boondoggle of a border wall. He has grabbed $250 million from our state's budget to secure our border, but that would build less than 10 miles of wall on our 1,200-mile border with Mexico and won't keep anyone from crossing. This is Jim Hightower saying, did I mention that Abbott wants to run for president? Not of the insane governor's club, but of America. Seriously. Howdy-ho, folks. Thanks for tuning in and sharing my weekly commentaries. Also, please join me for a live web show I host every other Tuesday, the Hightower Lowdown Happy Hour at the Chat and Chew Cafe. You can join the action live online as I chat with grassroots leaders and progressive sparklies from around the country. Go to hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew to find out about upcoming guests and watch past episodes. That's hightowerlowdown.org/chat-and-chew.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1934. That was the day known as Bloody Thursday. The historic West Coast maritime strike had been raging since May 9th. Longshoremen refused to cede to the Industrial Association, determined to open the ports by force. The shipping bosses had rejected strikers' demands, including a union hiring hall and recognition of offshore unions. By July 3rd, picketers had been fighting for hours to stop trucks sent to move cargo under police protection as bosses attempted to open the ports. At 8 a.m. on this day, a line of strike-breaking trucks emerged. Thousands of strikers amassed in the warehouse district. The Battle of Rincon Hill had begun. The fighting continued throughout the afternoon in the center of the Embarcadero as strikers attempted to stop the scab freight cars. By the time it was over, longshoreman Howard Speary and strike supporter Nick Bordeaux lay dead from police bullets. 30 strikers had been shot and dozens more lay in the hospital, some critically wounded. The San Francisco Chronicle reported, blood ran red in the streets of San Francisco. In Workers on the Waterfront, Bruce Nelson notes, quote, Bloody Thursday was an epic moment. Strikers conducted themselves with remarkable precision and imagination in the face of 3 successive assaults by police who were using their firearms freely and laying down a barrage of tear gas bombs. Donald Mackenzie Brown, the businessman eyewitness, was overawed by the workers' insane courage in the face of bullets, gas, clubs, horse hooves, death against fast patrol cars and the radio. They fought back with rocks and bolts till the street was a mass of debris. They were fighting desperately for something that seemed to be life for them. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 60 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 100 degrees, which is nearly the same as yesterday, they say, because when they say it was nearly the same as yesterday was 106 here. Come on. Well, abundant sunshine. Winds will be out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies tonight with lows around the mid-60s. Winds continuing out of the northwest at 5 to 10. And mainly sunny skies tomorrow with highs near 100. Winds will slightly shift out of the northwest, but increasing in velocity at 10 to 15 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus have not been updated since late Friday, but it has increased from the time that we spoke on Friday. It now stands at 11,664, though the confirmed deceased remain at 148. Grass pollen is rated very high here right outside the window in Rogue River proper, and I can attest to that. The air quality index, though, is good at 43 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains very high at 9. Barometric pressure is rising at 30 inches, visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is down to 56% and falling. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations and a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 68 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 71 and cloudy. Rome is 87 degrees and sunny. Kyiv is 82 and fair. Kabul is 78 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 82 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 75 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 50 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 77 degrees Fahrenheit and sunny. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Frank Bajak of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, River City Ash Mondays. Cybersecurity teams worked feverishly yesterday, Sunday, on the 4th of July, to stem the impact of the single biggest global ransomware attack on record, with some details emerging about how the Russia-linked gang responsible breached the company whose software was the conduit. An affiliate of the notorious Revel gang, best known for extorting $11 million from the meat processor JBS after a Memorial Day attack, infected thousands of victims in at least 17 countries on Friday, largely through firms that remotely manage IT infrastructure for multiple customers, cybersecurity researchers said. Revel was demanding ransoms of up to $5 million, the researchers said, but late Sunday, it offered in a posting on its dark website a universal decryptor software key that would unscramble all affected machines in exchange for $70 million in cryptocurrency. Earlier, the FBI said in a statement that while it was investigating the attack, its scale may make it so that we are unable to respond to each victim individually. Experts said it was no coincidence that Revel launched the attack at the start of the 4th of July weekend, knowing U.S. offices would be lightly staffed. Many victims may not learn of it until they are back at work today on Monday. Most end users of managed service providers have no idea whose software keep their networks humming.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Deborah Alvarez and Diane Gentet of the Associated Press bring us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Protests against Bolsonaro spread across Brazil on Saturday, a day after a Supreme Court justice authorized a criminal investigation into his response to allegations of potential corruption involving a vaccine deal. Demonstrators gathered by the thousands in more than 40 cities to demand Bolsonaro's impeachment or greater access to vaccines against COVID-19. In Friday's decision, Supreme Court Justice Rosa Weber said the investigation is supported by recent testimony in a Senate committee investigating the government's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, that brings us to an end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, so do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.